Hello there, and welcome back to Sleepy Wilds. Tonight, we're settling in with the quiet story of a man whose steady hands kept the rhythm behind one of rock's most beloved bands for over 5 decades. He rarely sought the spotlight, content instead to hold the beat while others took the stage, and there's something deeply calming in that kind of quiet dedication. So let yourself get comfortable, dim the lights, and let your eyes grow heavy whenever they're ready to. There's no need to remember every detail. Just let the story carry you gently towards sleep. This is the story of Frank Beard. In the small town of Frankston, Texas, on a warm June day in 1949, a boy was born who would one day help define the sound of American rock music, though nobody in that quiet town could have known it at the time. His name was Frank Lee Beard, and his early years were spent much like any other child growing up in rural Texas, surrounded by wide open land and slow, unhurried afternoons. The family eventually settled in Irving, a growing town not far from Dallas, where young Frank would spend his formative years. It was here, in the ordinary rhythm of school days and summer evenings, that something began to stir in him, a quiet fascination with sound and rhythm that would later become the defining thread of his entire life. As a teenager, Frank discovered the drums, and something about the instrument simply made sense to him. He found himself drawn especially to the Beatles, whose records were sweeping across America at the time, and to the deep, soulful blues records that filled the airwaves of Texas radio stations. These two influences, the tight melodic energy of British rock and the raw, honest feeling of the blues, would blend together quietly in his playing for the rest of his career. He practiced patiently through those Texas summers, learning to keep time, to hold steady, to let the rhythm breathe without ever overwhelming it, a skill that would later become his signature. By the time he reached Irving High School, Frank had already begun playing with local groups, gathering with other young musicians in garages and small clubs around Dallas. There was nothing glamorous about those early years, just long practice sessions, borrowed equipment, and the simple joy of making music together. The Dallas music scene in those years was quietly vibrant, full of young players testing out different sounds and combinations of talent. Frank moved steadily through several early groups, each one teaching him something new about timing and about the particular patience required to be a good drummer rather than simply a loud one, a slow apprenticeship built one rehearsal at a time. Through these early bands, Frank crossed paths with a bassist named Dusty Hill, and the two quickly found an easy, natural chemistry playing together. They moved through several groups side by side, learning each other's rhythms and instincts, forming the kind of quiet musical partnership that only comes from years of shared practice and shared patience. Around this same time, in Houston, a young guitarist named Billy Gibbons was making a name for himself with his own band, developing a reputation for both his playing and his songwriting. As the decade drew toward its close, paths that had once run separately began to draw closer together, the way rivers eventually find their way toward the same wide sea. In late 1969, Frank helped bring Dusty Hill together with Billy Gibbons, and something clicked immediately between the three of them. There was no dramatic announcement, no grand plan, just three musicians recognizing in each other exactly the kind of sound they'd each been quietly searching for. They settled on a name that felt both playful and memorable, and began rehearsing together in Houston, slowly shaping the sound that would eventually become instantly recognizable across the world, built on Gibbons's guitar work, Hill's steady bass lines, and Frank's patient, unwavering rhythm underneath it all. Those early rehearsals took place in modest spaces, borrowed rooms, and small clubs scattered around the city, the three of them working through songs late into the evening, searching for the particular blend of blues and boogie that would come to define them. There was an easy trust between them from the very beginning, the kind that let each musician simply do what they did best without needing to compete for space. Frank later described those first sessions with quiet fondness, remembering how naturally everything seemed to fall into place once the three of them were finally in a room together, as though they had each been waiting, without quite knowing it, for the other two to arrive. The band released their first record in early 1971, a modest beginning that gave little hint of the decades of success still waiting ahead of them. Sales were quiet at first, the kind of gentle, unremarkable start that many great bands experience before their sound truly finds its audience. Frank spent these early years honing his particular style, a steady, understated approach that never called too much attention to itself, content instead to hold everything together from beneath the melody. It was a philosophy that would define his entire career, the belief that a great rhythm section serves the song rather than competing with it. Their second record continued this patient climb, earning modest but encouraging attention, a single small hit that suggested better things were still to come. The three musicians kept touring steadily through these years, playing wherever they could, building their sound and their audience one show at a time, patient in the same way Frank's own drumming had always been patient. It was during their third record that everything began to shift. A particular song, built around a hard shuffle rhythm and Frank's precise, understated triplets, began climbing the charts, carrying the whole album with it toward genuine national success, the slow culmination of years spent quietly perfecting their craft together. That song became something of a signature, its opening rhythm instantly recognizable, a steady, rolling groove that seemed to capture something essential about the Texas landscape they'd all grown up in, dusty roads and long summer nights distilled into 4 steady beats. Audiences responded immediately, filling clubs and theaters that had once held only a handful of curious listeners. For Frank, this gradual rise felt less like sudden fame and more like the natural continuation of everything he'd been building since those first garage rehearsals years earlier, each small step leading patiently toward the next, exactly as steady and unhurried as the rhythms he played. As the band's success grew through the middle of the decade, something interesting happened with their appearance. Billy and Dusty both grew long, distinctive beards, giving the band its visual signature. Frank, meanwhile, kept his face clean-shaven, an irony that would follow him affectionately for the rest of his career, the one member of a band called ZZ Top who never actually wore a beard himself. He came to embrace this joke with easy good humor over the years, often noting that it meant he could walk through a supermarket or a shopping mall without being recognized, while his two bandmates couldn't manage a simple errand without being noticed. There was something quietly freeing in that anonymity, a private space he could retreat into even as the band's fame continued growing around him. Their music continued evolving through these years, blending their blues rock roots with new textures and sounds, always anchored by Frank's steady, unshowy drumming underneath. He never sought solos or spotlight moments, content instead to be the quiet foundation that let his bandmates' more flamboyant personalities shine. Touring became a constant rhythm of its own, cities blurring together across long stretches of highway, one show following another in a steady, demanding pace that the band would maintain, remarkably, for decades to come. Behind the scenes, the three musicians developed an easy shorthand with one another, the kind that only comes from spending countless hours together on stages and tour buses across the country. Frank often said that the chemistry never felt like work, that playing alongside Billy and Dusty simply felt natural, three parts of the same steady machine moving forward together. Fans began to notice small signature details in Frank's playing, the particular way he approached a shuffle, the patient restraint he brought even to the band's most energetic songs. Critics and fellow musicians later pointed to this restraint as the secret ingredient holding the band's sound together, a foundation so steady it rarely called attention to itself, yet without which nothing else would have worked quite the same way. By the early 1980s, the demands of constant touring and the pressures of sustained success had taken their toll on Frank in quieter, more personal ways. He found himself struggling with substance abuse, a difficulty that had crept in gradually over years of life on the road, and eventually reached a point where he knew he needed help. He made the decision to check himself into rehabilitation, a choice that required real courage given the very public nature of his career. His bandmates responded with remarkable patience and loyalty, putting the band on hiatus and telling Frank simply to take whatever time he needed, without pressure, without rushing his recovery. This period marked a quiet turning point in Frank's life, a season of difficult, necessary work done largely away from the public eye. He emerged from it steadier, more grounded, carrying forward the same patient determination that had always defined his approach to music, now applied to his own well-being. When the band eventually returned, they returned stronger, both personally and creatively, entering what would become one of the most successful periods of their entire career, built on a foundation of trust and loyalty that had been quietly tested, and had held firm. Frank often reflected in later years on how grateful he felt for his bandmates' patience during that difficult stretch, recognizing how easily things might have gone differently without their steady support. That loyalty became, in its own way, another quiet thread running through the band's long history, proof that whatever challenges arose, the three of them would face them together rather than apart. The years that followed brought a renewed sense of purpose to their music, a fresh creative energy that carried them into new sonic territory while still holding on to the blues rock foundation that had always defined them. Frank's drumming remained as steady and dependable as ever, the same patient anchor it had always been, now carrying with it the quiet weight of everything he'd overcome to get there. The 1980s brought the band an entirely new kind of success, as their music embraced new production styles and found its way onto television screens across the country through a new medium that was reshaping the entire music industry. Their songs took on a fresh, polished energy, while Frank's drumming, now sometimes layered with electronic elements, still carried the same essential steadiness underneath. Hits from this era became inescapable across radio and television alike, the band's distinctive visual style, those long beards, the spinning guitars, the synchronized dance moves, becoming as recognizable as their music itself. Frank remained a quiet anchor throughout, his clean-shaven face and steady presence behind the drum kit a familiar, grounding contrast to his bandmates' theatrical flair. This period brought the band a level of mainstream visibility they'd never quite reached before, entire arenas filled with fans singing along to songs that had become part of the wider cultural fabric of the decade. Yet even amid this larger spotlight, Frank maintained the same understated approach that had always defined him, letting the music speak for itself. Behind the scenes, the three musicians continued their easy creative partnership, writing and recording together with the same natural chemistry that had first brought them together over a decade earlier, weathering trends and changing styles while never losing their essential sound. Frank later described this era as one of the most enjoyable stretches of his career, a time when the band's hard-won success finally allowed them a bit more creative freedom in the studio, more time to experiment, more resources to bring their ideas fully to life. Even so, he remained grounded, treating each new record with the same careful attention he'd brought to their very first sessions years before. The band's growing fame never seemed to change Frank's approach to his craft. Interviews from this period often noted his quiet, unassuming manner, a man clearly comfortable letting his music speak louder than any words he might offer about himself, content to remain the steady heartbeat behind everything the band accomplished. As the decades continued unfolding, the band settled into a remarkable rhythm of their own, touring steadily, releasing new music periodically, and maintaining a devoted fan base that had grown alongside them since those early Texas club shows. Frank remained the constant thread through all of it, his drumming style evolving subtly over the years while keeping its essential patient character intact. He often spoke fondly in later interviews about the particular joy of live performance, the feeling of locking into a groove alongside Billy and Dusty night after night, each show slightly different from the last, yet all built on that same steady foundation they'd first discovered together decades earlier. It was, he suggested, less like work and more like an ongoing conversation between old friends. The band earned numerous honors and recognitions through these years, including induction into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, a milestone that acknowledged not just their commercial success but the genuine, lasting influence their sound had on generations of musicians who followed them. Through it all, Frank maintained his characteristic humility, rarely seeking individual attention, content instead to let the band's collective achievement speak for the countless hours of shared work that had gone into building something built to last. Fellow musicians who worked alongside the band over the years often remarked on Frank's quiet professionalism, the way he approached every show, whether an intimate club performance or a massive stadium concert, with the same careful, steady focus. There was never a sense of coasting on past success, only a continued dedication to getting the rhythm exactly right, night after night. Younger drummers who came up admiring the band's music often pointed to Frank's restraint as a lesson worth learning early, the understanding that true skill sometimes lies not in filling every available space with sound, but in knowing precisely when to hold back, letting the groove itself carry the weight of the song. Let us pause here for a moment, resting quietly in the steady rhythm of this long, patient career. Picture a young boy in Frankston, Texas, discovering the drums for the first time, tapping out simple beats, unaware of the decades of music still waiting ahead of him. Picture the garages of Dallas, borrowed equipment, long practice sessions stretching into evening. Picture 2-3 young musicians finding each other in Houston, recognizing something instantly familiar in each other's playing, the beginning of a partnership that would carry them across 5 decades together. There's something deeply calming in imagining that kind of steady, patient loyalty, 3 people simply choosing, again and again, to keep making music together. Picture the long highways between shows, the countless stages, the steady, unshowy rhythm holding everything together beneath the louder, flashier elements of the performance. Frank's contribution was never about drawing attention to itself, but about providing exactly what the music needed, quietly, faithfully, night after night. We will continue shortly, following the rest of this long, steady story, but for now, let yourself rest in this patient rhythm, this reminder that sometimes the quietest contributions are the ones that hold everything else together. Let your breathing settle into something slow and even, matching the same unhurried pace that defined Frank's own approach to his craft, never rushed, never forced, simply steady and present, one beat following naturally after the last. There's nothing more that needs to happen in this moment, only this quiet, patient stillness. Picture the warm Texas evening light settling over those early rehearsal spaces, dust drifting slowly through open windows, the distant sound of a drum keeping time somewhere in the background, patient and unhurried, exactly as it always was. As the years continued rolling forward, the band's remarkable consistency became something of a rarity in the music industry, 3 original members still playing together, still touring, still creating new music together, decade after decade, largely unchanged in their essential lineup and their essential sound. Frank continued to approach each new tour with the same quiet dedication he'd always shown, even as health challenges began, in later years, to periodically test him. He faced these difficulties with the same patient resilience that had carried him through earlier struggles, leaning on the same loyal bandmates who had supported him decades earlier. In 2021, the band experienced its first significant change in over 5 decades when Dusty Hill passed away, a loss that deeply affected both Frank and Billy. Yet even through this difficult transition, the band continued forward, welcoming a longtime member of their crew into the bass position, honoring the legacy the 3 of them had built together while finding a way to keep the music continuing. Frank remained a steady presence through this period of change, his drumming as reliable as ever, a living thread connecting the band's earliest days to whatever chapters still lay ahead, carrying forward the patient, steady rhythm that had defined his entire remarkable career. Those who worked closely with the band during this transition often spoke of Frank's quiet strength during a genuinely difficult time, his steady presence offering a kind of grounding reassurance to everyone around him, much as his drumming had always grounded the music itself. He continued showing up, continued playing, continued honoring the partnership the 3 of them had built so many years earlier. The band's continued touring through these years became its own kind of testament, proof that the music they created together still resonated deeply with audiences old and new alike, filling venues with fans who had grown up alongside their songs and newer listeners discovering that same steady, patient sound for the very first time. Looking back across the full arc of his remarkable life, what stands out most about Frank Beard isn't any single dramatic moment, but the sheer, steady consistency of his contribution across more than 5 decades. From those first garage rehearsals in Dallas to sold-out arenas around the world, his approach never fundamentally changed, patient, understated, always in service of the song. His signature style influenced generations of drummers who came after him, many of whom cited his particular blend of restraint and precision as a model worth studying, proof that the most memorable rhythms often come not from complexity, but from knowing exactly what a song needs and providing precisely that, nothing more, nothing less. Beyond the music itself, Frank's story carries a quieter lesson too, about loyalty, about showing up for the people you've built something meaningful with, about facing personal struggles honestly and finding your way through them with the support of those who care about you. His decades-long partnership with Billy Gibbons and Dusty Hill stood as a rare example of creative collaboration built to last. Tonight, as this story settles gently toward its close, let yourself rest in the steady, patient rhythm of a life well lived, one beat following naturally after the last, exactly as it always had, for as long as the music continued to play. There's a particular comfort in stories like this one, quiet reminders that a life doesn't need constant spotlight to matter deeply, that steady, faithful dedication to something you love can carry you further than you might ever have imagined when you first began. Frank simply kept showing up, kept holding the rhythm steady, kept trusting the people beside him, decade after decade. As you drift now toward your own rest tonight, let that same steady rhythm carry you gently along, patient and unhurried, one breath following naturally after the last, exactly as it should. Beyond the stages and studios, Frank's personal life carried its own quiet rhythms, a devotion to his family that mirrored the same steady loyalty he brought to his music. He often spoke of returning home between tours as one of his favorite parts of the whole experience, trading the noise of arenas for the calm of ordinary days spent close to the people who mattered most to him. He eventually settled at a ranch outside Houston, in Richmond, Texas, a quiet piece of land that offered him space to breathe between the demands of touring life. Friends who visited often described the property as a place of genuine peace, wide open fields, slow mornings, the kind of unhurried stillness that seemed to suit Frank's temperament perfectly. It was here, surrounded by the land he loved, that Frank found a kind of grounding that balanced the constant motion of his career. He raised horses on the property, tended to the land, and found in this quiet rural life a counterbalance to decades spent on stages and tour buses, reminder that even the busiest, most demanding careers need somewhere calm to return to. This ranch would remain a constant throughout the later decades of his life, a steady anchor point much like the rhythms he played, patient, unhurried, and entirely his own. Neighbors in the small Texas community often described Frank as approachable and unassuming, a man who, despite his fame, never seemed to carry himself as anything more than an ordinary person who happened to play drums for a living. He'd stop for casual conversation, wave from his truck along quiet country roads, entirely comfortable in a life that felt worlds away from stadium tours. This ability to move easily between two very different worlds, the roaring energy of a sold-out concert and the quiet stillness of rural Texas, seemed to suit Frank particularly well. Those who knew him often said it reflected something true about his character, a man capable of holding both intensity and calm within the same steady, grounded presence. Throughout his career, Frank developed a particular reputation among fellow musicians as a drummer's drummer, someone whose technical skill was matched by an equally rare musical wisdom, the ability to know precisely when restraint served a song better than flash. Many drumming instructors would go on to reference his playing as a teaching example, particularly his work on the band's early hit built around a driving shuffle rhythm. That particular pattern, a snare rim tap building into a rolling triplet feel, became something of a rite of passage for young drummers learning to play blues rock, studied and practiced in bedrooms and rehearsal spaces around the world by musicians who had never met Frank but felt they understood something of his musical philosophy simply through learning his parts. Frank himself remained humble about this influence, often deflecting praise back toward his bandmates or toward the blues musicians who had originally inspired his own playing decades earlier. He seemed genuinely more interested in talking about the music itself than in discussing his own significant contribution to it. This humility, consistent across decades of interviews and public appearances, became as much a part of his public identity as his drumming itself, a quiet, grounded presence in an industry often defined by much louder personalities. Music journalists who interviewed him over the years often remarked on how genuinely surprised he seemed whenever his own skill was praised directly, as though he'd never quite thought of himself as anything exceptional, simply a working musician who loved what he did and tried to do it as well as he possibly could, night after night, for as long as anyone would have him. That same modesty extended to how he discussed the band's overall legacy, always framing their success as something the three of them had built together rather than any individual achievement, a shared history stretching back to those first tentative rehearsals in Houston, built slowly and patiently across more decades than most bands ever managed to stay together at all. Let us pause here for a while, resting in the quiet stillness of that Texas ranch, wide fields stretching out under warm afternoon light, horses grazing slowly in the distance. Picture Frank walking these grounds between tours, unhurried, content, entirely at ease in this simpler version of his life away from the stage lights and roaring crowds. Picture the calm rhythm of ordinary days here, mornings spent tending to the land, afternoons passing slowly beneath wide Texas skies, evenings settling into quiet conversation with family. There's something deeply peaceful in imagining this contrast, the same hands that had powered decades of driving rock rhythms finding equal contentment in the slow, steady work of caring for horses and open land. This ability to hold both worlds gently, the thunder of the stage and the stillness of the ranch, speaks to something worth carrying with you into your own rest tonight, this reminder that intensity and calm need not live in opposition, that a full life often means learning to move fluidly between both. We will continue shortly, following the remaining threads of this steady, patient story, but for now, let this quiet Texas stillness settle gently over you, patient and unhurried, exactly as it always was for the man at the center of this story. Let your breath slow further, matching the same unhurried pace of a warm ranch afternoon, nothing urgent, nothing demanding your attention, only this soft, settled quiet stretching gently in every direction. The horses continue their slow grazing somewhere in the distance, unbothered, entirely at peace. There's nowhere else you need to be in this moment, nothing left to accomplish tonight, only this same patient stillness that once welcomed a tired musician home after long stretches on the road, ready now to welcome you just as gently toward your own rest. As the band moved into the 2000s, their status as elder statesmen of American rock became firmly established, their influence visible across generations of musicians who had grown up on their records. Frank continued touring steadily through these years, his enthusiasm for live performance seemingly undiminished by the passing decades. The band's induction into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame in 2004 stood as one of the most significant recognitions of their long career, a formal acknowledgement of the lasting impact their music had made. Frank attended the ceremony with characteristic quiet dignity, sharing the honor easily with Billy and Dusty, the same partnership that had carried them this far together. Documentaries and retrospectives began appearing more frequently during this period, chronicling the band's remarkable journey from those early Houston rehearsals to international stardom. Frank participated in these projects with his usual understated charm, offering candid, often humorous reflections on decades of shared history. These retrospective moments gave audiences a fuller picture of the man behind the drum kit, revealing a quick wit and genuine warmth that had always existed alongside his more reserved public persona, qualities that longtime fans had perhaps sensed but rarely seen expressed so directly. In one widely remembered documentary interview, Frank recalled the band's earliest rehearsals with visible fondness, laughing easily at memories of those long, unpolished sessions, admitting that none of them had any real sense at the time of how far the music might eventually carry them. His storytelling carried the same unhurried, patient quality as his drumming, never rushed, always finding the natural rhythm of a good story. Fans who watched these interviews often commented on how disarmingly ordinary Frank seemed despite his extraordinary career, a man clearly more interested in the music and the friendships built alongside it than in any trappings of fame that had come his way over the decades. Frank's approach to his craft continued evolving even in later years, incorporating new techniques and adapting to changing musical trends while never abandoning the fundamental philosophy that had guided him since those early Dallas garage bands, that a great rhythm serves the song rather than demanding attention for itself. Younger musicians who had grown up idolizing the band often described meeting Frank as a genuinely humbling experience, expecting perhaps a larger-than-life rock star persona and instead finding a soft-spoken, generous man eager to talk shop about drumming technique or simply share a laugh backstage before a show. He remained active in mentoring younger drummers informally throughout these years, offering advice not through formal lessons but through the example of his own continued dedication to the craft, showing up prepared, staying focused during rehearsals, treating every performance with the same seriousness regardless of the venue's size. This quiet mentorship extended the band's influence well beyond their own recorded catalog, shaping how an entire generation of musicians thought about rhythm, restraint, and the patient, unglamorous work required to sustain a meaningful career across so many decades. Backstage crews who worked alongside the band for years often described Frank as one of the easiest, most considerate people they'd encountered in the industry, always polite, always appreciative of the work that went into making each show run smoothly. This reputation followed him consistently across decades, a rare consistency of character that many who knew him considered as remarkable as his musical talent. Even as the demands of touring grew more challenging with age, Frank approached each new stretch of shows with the same steady determination he'd always carried, never treating his decades of experience as an excuse to coast, always bringing genuine effort and care to every performance, right up through his final years on stage. As health challenges became a more regular part of his later years, Frank continued facing them with the same quiet resilience that had defined his approach to every earlier obstacle in his life. He periodically stepped back from touring when needed, always with the full support of his bandmates, who understood, as they always had, the importance of taking whatever time was necessary. The band's touring schedule adapted accordingly during these years, built around Frank's health while still honoring the deep commitment all three musicians felt toward their fans and toward the music itself. This flexibility reflected the same loyalty that had carried the band through difficult moments decades earlier, a partnership built on genuine care rather than mere professional obligation. Fans responded to these adjustments with overwhelming support and patience of their own, many expressing gratitude simply for the decades of music Frank had already given them, understanding that his well-being mattered more than any single show or tour date. This mutual respect between Frank and the audiences who had followed his career for so long spoke to something genuine that had grown between them over the decades, a relationship built not on spectacle but on the steady, honest craftsmanship he'd brought to his music since the very beginning. Bandmates and crew members alike often described this period with quiet admiration for how Frank continued approaching his work, never complaining, never treating his challenges as a burden to those around him, simply adjusting where needed and continuing forward with the same patient determination that had carried him through every earlier chapter of his life. The band's longtime fans, many of whom had followed their music since those early 1970s records, understood implicitly the weight of what this steady continuation represented, three musicians still choosing, after everything, to keep making music together for as long as they possibly could. Let us rest here once more, in the quiet space of reflection near the later chapters of this long story. Picture Frank surrounded by decades of memory, a career spanning more than 5 decades, countless shows, countless recordings, all built on that same patient, steady approach he'd carried since his very first rehearsal. Picture the ranch once more, its wide fields now familiar and beloved after so many years, a place that had witnessed his return home after countless tours, a constant, grounding presence through every chapter of his remarkable life. There's something deeply peaceful in imagining that same steady land still waiting for him after each long stretch on the road. Picture, too, the friendships that carried him through it all, Billy and Dusty, and later the crew members and fellow musicians who came to know him across the decades, each relationship built patiently over time, much like the music itself, layer upon layer of trust and shared history. We will continue shortly toward the final chapters of this story, but for now, let this quiet reflection settle gently over you, this reminder that a life well lived often means simply continuing, patiently and faithfully, for as long as you possibly can. Let yourself sink a little further into stillness now, matching your own breathing to the same slow, patient rhythm that carried Frank through so many decades of steady, faithful work. There's nothing left to hold on to tonight, only this soft, settled quiet, gentle and unhurried. Somewhere far off, imagine the last echo of a drum beat fading softly into silence, patient and complete, the way a long, well-played song eventually settles into its final, peaceful rest. The band continued touring into the 2020s, remarkable for musicians who had first started playing together more than 5 decades earlier, still bringing genuine energy and dedication to every performance. Frank remained a steady, beloved presence throughout, his drumming as reliable and heartfelt as it had always been. Interviews from these later years often carried a reflective quality, Frank looking back across his remarkable career with evident gratitude, expressing genuine appreciation for the life music had given him, the friendships, the experiences, the simple joy of doing something he loved for so many decades. He spoke often during this period about feeling fortunate, recognizing how rare it was for a band to stay together, largely unchanged, across so many years, crediting this longevity to the deep mutual respect and genuine friendship that had always existed between the 3 original members. These later reflections offered fans a meaningful glimpse into how Frank understood his own remarkable journey, not as a story of individual achievement, but as a shared, patient partnership sustained through decades of mutual trust, hard work, and an enduring love for the music itself. He often credited his family too during these reflective conversations, acknowledging the steady support that had allowed him to pursue such a demanding career for so long, the patience of loved ones who understood the particular rhythms of a touring musician's life, the long absences balanced against the equally treasured time spent together back home. Those closest to him during these years described a man at genuine peace with the life he'd built, grateful rather than nostalgic, still finding real joy in each new show even after thousands of performances across 5 remarkable decades of steady, dedicated work. The band's music continued reaching new generations of listeners throughout these years, songs first recorded decades earlier finding fresh audiences through streaming platforms and continued radio play, introducing Frank's steady, patient drumming to listeners who hadn't even been born when those tracks were first recorded. This ongoing relevance spoke to something timeless about the music the 3 of them had created together, built on rhythms and feelings that transcended any particular era or trend, the kind of steady, honest craftsmanship that continues resonating regardless of when a listener first encounters it. Younger fans discovering the band for the first time often express genuine surprise at how vital and alive the music still felt, unaware perhaps of just how many decades separated them from those original recording sessions, a testament to the lasting quality of work built patiently, with genuine care, rather than chasing whatever trends happened to be popular at the time. Frank took quiet pride in this continued relevance, understanding it as perhaps the truest measure of what he and his bandmates had accomplished together, music that had proven, across so many years, to genuinely matter to people, one steady, patient rhythm at a time. He often reflected that this was the part of his career he found most rewarding in later years, not the accolades or the records sold, but the simple knowledge that somewhere, someone was discovering their music for the very first time, feeling that same steady rhythm settle into them the way it had settled into audiences decades earlier. This sense of ongoing connection between generations of listeners became, in its own quiet way, one of the most meaningful parts of Frank's legacy, a reminder that patient, honest craftsmanship tends to outlast whatever trends surround it, continuing to resonate long after it was first created. As we near the close of tonight's story, let us reflect once more on the remarkable arc of Frank Beard's life, from a small Texas town to stages around the entire world, carried forward by patient dedication, genuine loyalty, and an unshakable love for the steady, unshowy craft of keeping time. His legacy lives on not just in the recordings that continue reaching new listeners, but in the countless drummers who studied his restraint, his precision, his understanding that the best rhythm section serves the song rather than demanding attention for itself. This lesson, quiet and unglamorous as it may seem, remains one of his most enduring contributions to music. Beyond the music, his story offers something gentler too, a reminder about loyalty and partnership, about facing personal struggle honestly and finding your way through with the support of people who care about you, about the quiet contentment found in simple things, a ranch, a family, wide-open Texas land. Tonight, as this story settles toward its close, carry with you the same steady, patient rhythm that defined Frank's remarkable life, unhurried, faithful, and entirely his own, one beat following gently after the last, exactly as it always had. Beyond his own band, Frank's influence quietly touched the broader Texas music scene throughout his career, a region whose blues rock heritage he helped carry forward and expand for new generations of musicians. Younger Texas bands often cited the trio as foundational listening, a bridge between the deep blues traditions of the region and the more polished rock sounds that followed. Local musicians in Houston and Dallas spoke fondly of encountering Frank at smaller venues over the years, whether supporting other acts or simply attending shows as an enthusiastic fan of the music scene that had first shaped his own sound decades earlier. He never seemed to outgrow this genuine love for live music in its rawest, most unpolished form. This continued presence within the local scene reflected something essential about Frank's character, a man who never let his own considerable success distance him from the community and traditions that had first nurtured his talent. He remained, in many ways, the same curious young drummer who had once absorbed everything he could from Dallas's clubs and rehearsal spaces. Musicians who crossed paths with him at these smaller shows often remarked on how genuinely present he seemed, fully engaged with whatever performance was happening, still finding real joy in watching other artists work, decades after his own career had reached its greatest heights. This quality, An enduring curiosity and appreciation for music in all its forms seemed to keep Frank grounded throughout his long career, a reminder that he never fully separated himself from being simply a fan of good music, regardless of how large his own accomplishments had grown over the years. Younger players who met him at these gatherings often described the encounter as unexpectedly encouraging, Frank offering genuine, specific praise for their playing rather than the polite, generic compliments fame sometimes produces, a small kindness that many carried with them long after those brief conversations ended. The particular sound Frank helped create with his bandmates continued influencing film and television throughout the decades, their music appearing in countless soundtracks, commercials, and cultural moments that introduced their steady, driving rhythms to audiences who might never have sought out the original records themselves. This widespread cultural presence meant that Frank's drumming, whether audiences realized it or not, had become woven into the broader fabric of American popular culture, instantly recognizable even to listeners who couldn't necessarily name the band or the song playing in the background of a favorite film scene. Frank found genuine amusement in this kind of unexpected cultural presence, often mentioning in interviews how strange and wonderful it felt to hear their music unexpectedly, playing in a store or featured in a movie he'd gone to see purely for entertainment, a small, pleasant surprise that never seemed to fully lose its novelty for him. This quiet, pervasive influence, spread across decades and countless unexpected contexts, spoke to something lasting about the music the three of them had created together, rhythms and sounds that had settled comfortably into the collective cultural memory of an entire era. Advertisers and filmmakers alike gravitated toward their songs for the same reason audiences had connected with them decades earlier, an instantly recognizable groove that conveyed energy and authenticity without needing any explanation, the kind of musical shorthand that only comes from truly distinctive, well-crafted rhythm work. Frank rarely dwelled on the financial or professional implications of this widespread licensing, seeming far more interested in the simple, almost childlike pleasure of hearing his own drumming pop up in unexpected places, a quiet reminder of just how far the music had traveled since those first modest club shows in Houston so many decades earlier. Let us pause once more here, resting quietly in this steady rhythm of memory and legacy. Picture the countless stages Frank stood on across 5 decades, each one slightly different, yet all connected by that same patient, steady presence behind the drum kit, a constant thread running through an extraordinary career. Picture, too, the quiet moments between shows, tour buses rolling through the night, small conversations backstage, the simple camaraderie of musicians who had spent decades building something meaningful together. There's a gentle comfort in imagining all of this, the vast scale of a remarkable career resting on such simple, human foundations. Picture the countless listeners across the world who found comfort or joy in his steady rhythms, driving down highways with the radio playing, dancing at parties, discovering the music for the first time through a parent's old record collection. Each of these small moments, multiplied across decades and countless listeners, formed the quiet backbone of Frank's lasting legacy. We will continue shortly toward the close of this long, patient story, but for now, let this steady rhythm of memory settle gently over you, unhurried and warm, exactly as Frank's own music always was. Let your breathing settle into that same patient rhythm now, slow and even, matching the quiet pulse of a life spent keeping time for others. There's nothing left to hold on to in this moment, only this soft, settled stillness, gentle and complete. Somewhere far off, imagine a warm stage light dimming slowly to black, the last echo of a steady drum beat fading gently into silence, patient and unhurried, the way a long, well-loved song eventually settles softly into its final rest. As Frank's career entered its final decade, he approached each remaining tour with a quiet appreciation, aware, perhaps more than ever, of just how remarkable it was to still be doing the thing he loved most, alongside the same people he'd started this journey with more than 5 decades earlier. Interviews from this period carried a particular warmth, Frank reflecting openly on gratitude, on friendship, on the simple privilege of a life spent making music that genuinely mattered to people. He spoke less about technique during these later conversations and more about the relationships and experiences that had given his career its deepest meaning. Fans who attended shows during these final years often described a palpable sense of appreciation radiating from the stage, 3 musicians clearly aware of how fortunate they were to still be sharing this experience together, bringing genuine warmth and gratitude to performances that might, for any given show, be among their last together. This awareness never seemed to diminish the quality or energy of their performances. If anything, it deepened them, adding a layer of genuine emotional resonance to songs that audiences had loved for decades, now carrying the added weight of shared history and mutual appreciation. Longtime fans who had followed the band since their earliest years often described these final tours as especially moving, watching 3 musicians who had grown up together, in a sense, on the road, still finding joy and connection in the same music that had first brought them together so many decades earlier. Frank himself seemed at peace during these years, carrying none of the bitterness or fatigue that sometimes accompanies a long career, instead radiating a quiet, genuine contentment with everything his life in music had given him, right up through his very last performances alongside the bandmates who had become like family. The story of Frank Beard, in many ways, offers a quiet lesson about what it means to sustain a meaningful creative partnership across an entire lifetime. Where so many bands splinter under the pressures of fame, disagreement, or simple exhaustion, this particular trio found a way to remain together, largely unchanged, for more than 5 decades. This remarkable consistency wasn't accidental. It grew from genuine mutual respect, from a shared understanding that the music they created together mattered more than any individual ego, and from a willingness to support one another through the inevitable difficulties that any long partnership eventually faces. Frank's own contribution to this stability cannot be overstated, his steady, unshowy temperament providing a kind of grounding influence that likely helped smooth over whatever tensions naturally arose across so many years of close collaboration. He seemed instinctively to understand the value of patience, both in his drumming and in his relationships. This quiet wisdom, expressed consistently across both his music and his life, offers something worth carrying forward, a reminder that the most enduring achievements often come not from dramatic gestures, but from patient, steady dedication sustained faithfully over a very long time. Music historians studying the band's remarkable longevity often point to this particular chemistry as a rare and valuable case study, 3 distinct personalities finding a way to complement rather than compete with one another, each contributing something essential that the others simply couldn't provide alone. Frank's role within this dynamic, quiet, steady, endlessly patient, proved every bit as vital as his bandmates' more visible contributions, reminder that true partnership often depends on precisely this kind of complementary balance, different strengths woven together into something far greater than any one person could have built alone. Let us rest here once more, near the closing chapters of this long, patient story. Picture the full arc of Frank's remarkable journey, a boy discovering rhythm in a small Texas town, a young man finding his musical family in Houston, decades of steady, faithful dedication carrying him across stages around the entire world. Picture the ranch, the horses, the wide-open land that welcomed him home after each long tour, a constant, grounding presence throughout his extraordinary life. Picture, too, the countless listeners who found comfort, joy, or simple companionship in his steady, patient rhythms across 5 remarkable decades. There's something deeply peaceful in holding this entire story gently in mind, this reminder that a life well lived doesn't require constant reinvention or dramatic change. Sometimes it simply requires patient, faithful dedication to the things and people you love, sustained quietly, year after year. We will close this story shortly, but for now, let this full, patient rhythm settle completely over you, unhurried and warm, exactly as Frank's own music always was, carrying you gently now toward your own well-earned rest. Let your body sink a little deeper into stillness, your breathing slow and steady, matching the same unhurried pace that guided a lifetime of patient, faithful rhythm keeping. There's nowhere else you need to be tonight, nothing left to hold on to, only this soft, complete quiet settling gently around you. Somewhere far off, imagine that same warm Texas evening light one final time, settling slowly over wide open fields, patient and golden, exactly as it always did, welcoming a tired traveler gently home. Even beyond his musical achievements, Frank's story carries meaningful lessons about resilience and honest self-reflection. His willingness to confront his struggles directly, to seek help when he needed it, and to allow his bandmates to support him through genuine difficulty, offers a quiet but powerful example of strength expressed through vulnerability rather than denial. This willingness to be honest about his challenges, rather than hiding them behind the polished image often expected of public figures, added a layer of genuine humanity to how fans understood him, someone who had faced real difficulty and found his way through it with patience and support, rather than someone who had simply avoided hardship altogether. Mental health advocates and addiction recovery communities have occasionally referenced stories like Frank's as meaningful examples of successful, long-term recovery within demanding, high-pressure careers, proof that sustained sobriety and continued professional success can genuinely coexist with the right support and personal commitment. This aspect of his story, while quieter than his musical accomplishments, offered its own kind of inspiration to those who encountered it, a reminder that difficult chapters need not define an entire life, that genuine recovery and continued growth remain possible, even within the demanding rhythms of a public career. Frank rarely dwelled publicly on this particular chapter, preferring instead to let the decades of steady, dedicated work that followed speak for themselves, a quiet demonstration that recovery, once genuinely embraced, could open the door to some of the most fulfilling years of an entire career. Those who knew him during this later period often remarked on a particular groundedness in his presence, a man who seemed to carry his hard-won peace quietly but unmistakably, present and engaged in every conversation, every performance, every ordinary moment shared with the people around him. As tonight's story approaches its final chapters, it's worth pausing to consider the sheer breadth of Frank's musical contribution, songs that have been played, danced to, and cherished by millions of listeners across more than 5 decades, each one carrying his patient, steady drumming as its unshakable foundation. From those early Texas club shows to sold-out arenas, from vinyl records to modern streaming platforms, his music traveled further and touched more lives than that quiet, drum-obsessed teenager Irving could likely have ever imagined. Yet through all of it, he remained remarkably consistent in his approach, humble, patient, endlessly dedicated to serving the song above all else. This consistency, sustained across such an extraordinarily long career, stands as perhaps his most impressive achievement, not any single song or performance, but the remarkable steadiness of character and craft he maintained across 5 entire decades of public life. Fans and fellow musicians alike will continue discovering and rediscovering his contribution for generations to come, each new listener finding in his steady, patient rhythms the same quiet comfort and genuine musical wisdom that defined his entire remarkable career. This lasting impact extends far beyond simple nostalgia, representing instead a genuine, ongoing influence on how musicians across countless genres approach the fundamental relationship between rhythm and melody, restraint and expression, individual skill and collective purpose within a band. Music schools and drumming instructors continue referencing his particular approach as an essential study in musical maturity, proof that true mastery often reveals itself not through complexity, but through the quiet confidence of knowing exactly what a song requires and delivering precisely that, patiently, faithfully, night after night. Let us rest here once more, in this final quiet space before our story closes tonight. Picture the complete arc of a remarkable life, a small Texas boy discovering rhythm, a young musician finding his family in Houston, decades of patient, faithful dedication carried across countless stages around the entire world. Picture the ranch, still and peaceful under warm evening light, the horses grazing slowly, the same quiet stillness that welcomed Frank home after every long stretch on the road. Picture the friendships that carried him through it all, decades of genuine partnership built on trust, patience, and mutual respect. Picture, finally, the countless listeners across the world who found something meaningful in his steady, patient rhythms, comfort during difficult days, joy during celebrations, companionship on long drives through quiet nights, each connection small on its own, yet vast when gathered together across 5 remarkable decades. We will close this story shortly, but for now, let this complete, gentle picture settle fully over you, patient and warm, exactly as Frank's own steady rhythm always was, carrying you now, softly and completely, toward your own rest. Let your breathing slow completely now, matching that same unhurried, patient pace one final time, nothing left to hold on to, nothing left to accomplish, only this soft, settled stillness stretching gently in every direction around you. Somewhere far off, imagine the last warm light of a Texas evening fading slowly into deep, quiet dark, patient and complete, the way a long, well-lived life eventually settles gently into its own peaceful, well-earned rest. As this long, patient story finally draws toward its close, what remains most striking about Frank Beard's remarkable life is its quiet consistency, more than 5 decades of steady, faithful dedication to his craft, his bandmates, and the music that connected all of it together into something lasting and meaningful. From a small Texas town to stages around the entire world, his journey never lost its essential, grounded character, patient, humble, endlessly dedicated to serving something larger than himself. This steadiness, sustained across an entire lifetime, offers a quiet but powerful example of what genuine, lasting contribution can look like. His music will continue reaching new listeners for generations to come, each steady, patient rhythm carrying forward the same quiet wisdom that defined his entire remarkable career, a reminder that the most meaningful contributions often come not from seeking the spotlight, but from faithfully, patiently, holding everything else together. As you drift now toward your own rest tonight, let that same steady rhythm carry you gently along, patient and unhurried, one breath following naturally after the last, exactly as it always should, exactly as Frank's music always did. Beyond music, Frank carried a genuine appreciation for the American blues tradition that had first inspired him as a teenager, often speaking about specific artists whose records he'd worn thin during those early Texas years. This deep respect for blues history remained a constant thread throughout his entire career, informing everything he played. He frequently credited these blues pioneers as the true foundation of everything the band accomplished, insisting that their own sound was simply one branch growing from a much older, deeper musical tree. This humility about musical lineage reflected the same modest character that defined so much of Frank's public life. Fellow musicians often noted how naturally Frank wove blues sensibilities into even the band's most rock-oriented material, a subtle undercurrent that gave their songs a depth and authenticity that pure rock rhythms alone couldn't have provided. This blending became one of the defining characteristics of their entire sound. His respect for tradition never felt like mere imitation, instead representing a genuine, ongoing conversation with the musicians who came before him, each performance carrying forward lessons learned from records played countless times on a young boy's turntable in Texas decades earlier. This connection to blues tradition also shaped how Frank thought about musical legacy more broadly, understanding his own contribution as simply one link in a much longer chain stretching backward through generations of musicians and forward toward whoever might pick up a pair of drumsticks after hearing his own recording someday. He often expressed hope that younger listeners discovering the band's music might eventually trace their curiosity backward toward the blues records that had originally shaped his own playing, extending that same chain of musical inheritance a little further into the future. Charitable work occupied a quiet but meaningful place in Frank's later years, though he rarely sought public recognition for these efforts. He supported various causes connected to music education, understanding firsthand how transformative access to instruments and instruction could be for young people discovering their own musical talents. He also contributed quietly to organizations supporting addiction recovery, drawing on his own experience to help fund resources for others facing similar struggles. This particular cause held personal significance for him, a way of extending the same support and patience his own bandmates had once shown him during his most difficult years. Those involved with these organizations often described Frank's involvement as genuinely hands-on rather than merely financial, occasionally visiting programs directly, speaking quietly with participants, offering the same kind of steady, patient encouragement that had characterized his entire approach to life and music alike. This quieter side of his legacy, largely unpublicized during his lifetime, added another meaningful dimension to how those who worked alongside him understood his character, a man who used his platform thoughtfully, preferring genuine impact over public acknowledgement. Colleagues who knew of these efforts often described feeling genuinely moved by how naturally Frank approached this work, never treating it as an obligation or a public relations exercise, but as a sincere extension of gratitude for the second chance he'd been given decades earlier. This pattern of quiet generosity, consistent with everything else known about his character, reinforced the broader picture of a man whose steady, patient temperament extended well beyond his music, shaping how he moved through every aspect of his life with the same grounded humility. Let us pause once more here, resting quietly in this steady rhythm of reflection. Picture a man shaped by both remarkable success and genuine hardship, carrying both experiences with the same patient grace, using neither to define himself entirely, but allowing both to deepen his understanding of what truly mattered. Picture the quiet moments of generosity that rarely made headlines, a young musician finding encouragement, someone in recovery finding a patient, understanding ear, small acts of kindness woven throughout an extraordinary public career, largely unseen but deeply meaningful to those who received them. This blending of remarkable achievement and quiet humility offers something gentle to carry with you tonight, a reminder that genuine character often reveals itself most clearly in these smaller, unpublicized moments, rather than in the more visible accomplishments that typically define a public legacy. We will continue shortly toward the final chapters of this long story, but for now, let this quiet reflection on character and kindness settle gently over you, patient and warm, exactly as Frank himself always seemed to carry these qualities. Let your breathing slow further still, matching this same gentle, unhurried rhythm, nothing left to hold on to, only this soft settled quiet stretching out around you. There's a particular comfort in resting inside a story built on patience and kindness, one that asks nothing more of you than to simply let go. Somewhere in the quiet distance, imagine a warm porch light glowing softly against the darkening Texas sky, patient and welcoming, exactly the kind of quiet warmth that seemed to follow Frank wherever his long, remarkable journey eventually led him. The relationships Frank built within the broader music industry extended well beyond his own bandmates, encompassing decades of collaboration with producers, sound engineers, and session musicians who each played their own part in shaping the band's recorded catalog. Many of these professional relationships evolved into genuine, lasting friendships over the years. Producers who worked closely with the band often described Frank as remarkably easy to collaborate with, arriving prepared, offering thoughtful input without ego, always focused on serving whatever the song needed rather than pushing for personal recognition within the final mix. This collaborative spirit extended to how Frank approached the recording process itself, patient through countless takes, genuinely curious about new techniques and technologies as they emerged, never resistant to change simply for the sake of tradition, yet always grounded in the fundamental musical instincts that had guided him since his earliest days behind a drum kit. These decades of professional relationships, built on mutual respect and genuine collaboration, formed another quiet dimension of Frank's broader legacy within the music industry, a reputation for reliability and openness that extended well beyond his considerable talent alone. Session musicians who occasionally filled in during recording sessions often remarked on how welcoming Frank made them feel, never territorial about his own role, genuinely interested in whatever fresh perspective a new collaborator might bring to a familiar song. This openness helped keep the band's sound evolving naturally across the decades. Sound engineers who spent countless hours in the studio alongside him described a musician deeply attentive to the smallest sonic details, adjusting his playing subtly to complement whatever mood a particular track called for, a level of attentiveness that spoke to genuine dedication rather than simple technical routine. As we move deeper into this reflective final stretch of tonight's story, it's worth considering how Frank balanced the demands of an intensely public career with a genuine need for privacy and ordinary life. He rarely gave lengthy personal interviews, preferring to let his music and his live performances speak on his behalf. This careful balance between public and private life allowed Frank to maintain a genuine sense of normalcy despite decades of fame, returning always to his Texas ranch, to family, to the simple pleasures that had nothing to do with stadiums or record sales. Friends often noted how effortlessly he moved between these two very different worlds. This ability likely contributed significantly to his remarkable longevity within such a demanding industry, avoiding the burnout that has ended so many otherwise promising careers. By protecting this private space for himself, Frank ensured he always had somewhere genuine to return to, a wellspring of ordinary contentment that fame alone could never provide. His approach offers a quiet lesson about sustainability within any demanding pursuit, the importance of maintaining some space entirely separate from public expectation, a place where you remain simply yourself, unburdened by any audience's gaze. Family members often described how completely Frank seemed to set aside his public persona once he returned home, becoming simply a husband, a father, a neighbor tending to ordinary chores around the property, with little visible trace of the demanding touring schedule waiting for him just weeks away. This capacity for genuine presence in each separate part of his life, fully engaged on stage, fully engaged at home, seemed to reflect the same steady, focused attention he brought to his drumming itself, never divided, never distracted, simply present with whatever the moment required of him. Let us rest once more here, in this quiet, reflective space near the very end of tonight's story. Picture Frank moving easily between these two worlds, the roaring energy of a sold-out stadium and the quiet stillness of his Texas ranch, each one offering something essential that the other simply couldn't provide. Picture the countless ordinary evenings spent at home between tours, quiet dinners, familiar routines, the simple comfort of a life lived close to the people who mattered most. There's something deeply peaceful in imagining fame held so lightly, worn easily when needed, set aside just as easily once the stage lights dimmed. Picture, too, the steady thread running through every part of his life, patience, presence, genuine care for whatever the moment required, whether that meant holding a driving rhythm for thousands of cheering fans or simply sitting quietly with family on a warm Texas evening. We are nearing the close of tonight's story now, so let this final, complete picture settle gently over you, patient and warm, carrying you softly now toward your own rest, exactly as Frank's own steady presence always seemed to offer those around him. Let your breath continue slowing, gentle and unhurried, matching that same patient rhythm one final time. Nothing left to hold on to, nothing left to accomplish, only this soft, settled stillness stretching quietly around you, patient and complete. Somewhere far off, imagine the warm glow of a Texas ranch house window, soft light spilling gently across the darkening yard, patient and welcoming, exactly the kind of quiet warmth that always seemed to wait faithfully for him at the end of every long journey home. As we approach the closing reflections of this long story, it's worth considering how Frank's particular musical philosophy, patience over flash, service over spotlight, offers wisdom that extends well beyond drumming itself. This same quiet approach shaped how he moved through nearly every aspect of his remarkable life. Whether supporting his bandmates through difficult transitions, mentoring younger musicians, or contributing quietly to causes he believed in, Frank consistently demonstrated a preference for meaningful, unglamorous contribution over public recognition. This consistency across so many different contexts speaks to something genuine and deeply rooted in his character. Those closest to him often described this quality as his defining trait, more significant even than his considerable musical talent. A man who understood intuitively that lasting value often comes from steady, faithful presence rather than dramatic gesture, whether behind a drum kit or simply moving through ordinary daily life. This philosophy, expressed so consistently across 5 remarkable decades, offers perhaps the truest summary of who Frank Beard was, both as a musician and as a person, patient, faithful, endlessly dedicated to serving something larger than himself. Those who study the history of American rock music will likely continue returning to his example for generations, not merely for the technical brilliance of his playing, but for the quiet integrity with which he carried his entire career, a rare consistency between the music he made and the man he genuinely was. This alignment between craft and character, so often difficult to sustain across a long public life, remained remarkably steady throughout Frank's journey, offering a lasting example of what it might look like to build a meaningful life around patient, faithful dedication to the things and people you love most. Let us pause one final time before this story closes, resting quietly in the complete, gentle weight of everything we've shared tonight. Picture once more that small Texas town where it all began, a young boy discovering rhythm, unaware of the remarkable journey still waiting patiently ahead of him. Picture the decades that followed, garages and clubs, sold-out arenas, quiet ranch afternoons, countless friendships built slowly over time, all of it woven together by that same steady, patient thread running consistently through Frank's entire remarkable life. Picture, finally, the music itself, still playing somewhere even now, in cars and homes and quiet evening moments around the world, carrying forward his steady, faithful rhythm to listeners who may never know his name, yet feel something genuine and lasting in the music he helped create. This is the quiet, complete shape of a life well lived, patient dedication sustained faithfully across 5 remarkable decades, carried forward now into whatever comes next through the music itself, still resonating, still comforting, still keeping steady time for anyone who needs it. Let your breathing settle fully now into this same slow, patient rhythm, nothing left to hold on to, nothing left to accomplish, only this soft, complete stillness gathering gently around you like a warm quilt on a quiet night. Somewhere far off, imagine one final warm light dimming slowly into peaceful dark, patient and unhurried, the way a long, well-loved song eventually settles into its own gentle, complete silence, exactly as it always was meant to. And so, gently, our story comes to its close for tonight. Frank Beard's steady, patient rhythm carried a legendary band across more than 5 decades, and tonight, that same quiet, unhurried spirit has hopefully carried you a little closer toward your own rest. Thank you for spending this time with us, for walking slowly through this remarkable life, from a small Texas town to stages around the entire world, and back home again to quiet ranch evenings under warm Texas skies. Wherever you are listening from, we hope this steady, patient story gave you exactly the calm you needed tonight. If your eyes are still open, let them close now. Let your breath settle into something slow and even, matching that same patient rhythm one final time. There's nothing left to hold on to tonight, only rest, gentle and complete. Sleep well. Rest deeply. And remember, sometimes the quietest, steadiest contributions are the ones that hold everything else together. Good night.